Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani, and it is finally a week where we're going to have some news, meat on the bone stuff coming at you with the NFL Draft. 3 days beginning on Thursday. Round 1 then it's round 2 on Friday, rounds 2 and 3, actually, and then the rest of it on Saturday. We have a draft show, by the way, Thursday night, 7:30 right here on KDKA, but we have a lot to get into. Later in the program, we're going to talk about Major League Baseball. Will there be some resistance for players who may not like the MLB and its plan maybe to be in one city or 2 states? And what if Mike Trout says, I don't want to play because I don't want to risk anything? We'll get into that, but the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the NFL Draft. The Steelers have 6 picks, but none in the first round. Panel tonight to discuss this with you, Rich Walsh, my colleague here at KDKA-TV, and Andrew Filipponi from the PM team, 93.7 The Fan, and his national show, the Pony Express. So get right into it, Rich. What would be your draft strategy if you were Kevin Colbert and Mike Tomlin heading into this Thursday when they have no picks, knowing they have the first one on Friday? What would you do?
I'm going to go on offense with those first 2 picks. I want someone that's a playmaker now, and I think running back they might address with that first pick at 49, then wide receiver. Those are the 2 positions that they didn't address in free agency, which leads me to believe that's going to be a running back or wide receiver, running back. And why I'm thinking it's a running back, I had a chance to talk to Kevin Colbert at the NFL Combine. He mentioned 2 positions that are deep in this draft: offensive line and wide receiver. So if you see a run on running backs, and there's about 5 that could go in those first 2 rounds, late in the first, early in the second. So I think they go running back with their first pick.
And I think many of them, Richie, the guys you're talking about, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, throw Cam Akers in there for good measure too. Right now, and I mean this, I think they're just as good, maybe even better than James Conner, and it's because of the durability with Conner. You cannot, I get in trouble for bringing Jameis Winston's name up, and that's because the season was lost last year when you got down to backup quarterbacks. Well, you have the same issue at running back, guys, because James Conner doesn't play 16 games, and when he does, I think he's an average running back. I don't think he's a great one. The Steelers found Le'Veon Bell in the 2nd round at pick 48. That worked out pretty well until the holdout happened. So that's what I think they'll do, and that's what they should do, Bob. They need to find James Conner's replacement in this draft.
He is going into a final year, and if he does do well, and I like players heading into their final year, you might get some production from him, and therefore, if he has to leave, he has to leave. I understand that, but you mentioned Jonathan Taylor. For the record, I don't think he's going to be there. However, Rich, if he is there, this is also a running back who was an extreme workhorse with Wisconsin. Almost 1,000 carries in the years. Now, he's coming out as a junior. They like juniors. I get that. Still, a lot of wear and tear here. Are you concerned about that at all?
No, not at all. Le'Veon Bell, that was the knock on him, a lot of wear and tear. Jonathan Taylor is one of the fastest running backs in the draft. He's running a 4.39, somewhere in that neighborhood. That's Willie Parker speed. If he's there, that's your guy maybe. I personally like J.K. Dobbins. I am not worried about Jonathan Taylor. All these scouts, all these GMs think he is a late 1st rounder, early 2nd rounder, and there's a reason why. They've been scouting this guy. So I'm not worried about the wear and tear on Jonathan Taylor.
Bob, I mean, I think, they're what, all virtual for this draft? They're all, right. They can't go to a facility. I think if he could, Kevin Colbert would kiss Roger Goodell and hand deliver the 49th pick to him if he could for Jonathan Taylor. He's everything the Steelers, I think, need in a running back. You bring up the pitch count, all the carries, but he never got injured. And, I mean, isn't that what they're looking for? They're looking for a running back who they can depend on, who they know is going to be there for the grind of an entire season. And there's tread on the tire, sure, but there's also accountability and dependability with Taylor. Doesn't catch it out of the backfield, Bob, but he runs hard, and as Richie put it, he runs fast. And I think he is a #1 running back. I think he's a 1,000-yard rusher the day he gets to Pittsburgh if they decide to draft him.
And I don't think he'll be available there, but we'll see. It is a deep position, as is wide receiver, and the same situation exists there potentially. Juju Smith-Schuster's coming off a bad season based on his first or his year before that when he was a tremendous compliment to Antonio Brown. However, Andrew, I'll start with you on this. He's also a guy going into a final year, and they don't know what they're going to do. They haven't signed him yet. They still might. But the question is, do you trust what you saw from him a couple of years ago to come back? Roethlisberger will return. But do you let him go and look for another guy who can come in and essentially take his spot if one is available? Would you do that?
Well, I think Juju's going to want to get paid like he's one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. And I just don't see the stars aligning and everything working out for the Steelers with Juju long term. So they're going to have to find somebody to take his playing time or his snaps away, and they're great at finding wide receivers. It's one of the things I trust the Steelers on almost entirely. They've got a great sense for wide receiver. So my thing is, unless you've got an Antonio Brown, why would you pay a wide receiver big money when you can go draft his replacement, a younger guy with more years? I can't believe I'm going to say this like a Pirates fan, more years of team control. So I would use a third-round pick on a wide receiver because I don't think Juju, Richie, he's not here past 2020, is he? Let's be honest. Is he back here?
No, I don't think so.
I don't see any way it happens.
No, I don't think so. You know what? Juju Smith is what he was. That was a really, really good number 2 guy. He needs an Antonio Brown with him. We saw it early before he got hurt. He wasn't a number 1 guy. I even heard Stephen Smith talk about this, that he needs to prove that he's a number 1 guy on one of these NFL shows. I don't know if he is. I think a lot of people are questioning, is he a number 1 guy? So are you going to pay this guy $15 million a year if everyone is still questioning, if that's in the back of your mind, is this guy, can it be a number 1 guy? We don't know that.
How about if he does?
He didn't prove it in the games he was healthy last year.
How about if he does? How about if he has 1,300 yards and you don't sign him now? You're in a situation where you got potentially a franchise tag again. How do you handle that, or do you just let him go?
You know what? It is April right now, and I'm going to make a prediction. I don't think he will have 1,300 yards this year. I think Deontay Johnson will have more yards and be more of a dynamic player this year than Juju Smith-Schuster.
And Bob, that's the other side of it. If Richie's prediction comes true, then you're not going to want to re-sign him, right? Because I think at that point, he'll still only be 24 years old. He'll have 2 good seasons of 1,000 yards. He'll want to go into free agency and see if his agent can trick a team into paying him like a number 1 wide receiver. I think it's going to be very difficult to find that third bowl of porridge, that Goldilocks porridge that's just right, where the Steelers and Juju agree on a number long term. Very hard to do that, Bob. Very hard.
It is very hard, but it's also something that can happen. A guy like Connor will be motivated. We'll see how it goes. And by the way, he's only 23 years of age, and you're right. If he gets to that point, he will have youth and 2 productive seasons on his side. Hey, we have a lot to get into as we move along here. We're also going to talk about what happens on the defensive side of the ball because there are some intriguing issues there. One of them is, what do you do for Bud Dupree? Real quick, I'll get to you guys, and then we'll embellish on this topic. Andrew, Bud Dupree is a franchise tag. He hasn't signed it yet, which I'm a little surprised because other guys have done it. I assume he's not going to agree long term. If he doesn't, do the Steelers have to put a bigger emphasis on edge rusher, potentially even as high as 49 overall?
Well, you know what I would do, Bob? I'd go get a stopgap. I'd go sign a guy like Clay Matthews here and give him a 1 year, maybe a second year with an option that gives him an opportunity to be a situational pass rusher and maybe even a guy that takes playing time away from Bud Dupree. Not a good draft for outside linebacker, for edge rushers, right? It's Chase Young. Everything I hear from there is that it falls off Mount Kilimanjaro from there, and it's not a good draft for it. So why reach? Why reach? Maybe you sign a project or draft a project with like one of your 4th-round picks, but that guy's not going to step in this year and help. He's got to be a long-term project kind of guy.
They got to save that money for T.J. Watt. So I think Bud Dupree, unfortunately, he's going to be a 1-year kind of guy. And I kind of like the idea of going out and getting a project guy in the draft. There's a guy like Davian Taylor from Colorado. He has all the intangibles. He's a fast guy that maybe you could turn into a Bud Dupree type. I don't think you go high with an outside linebacker edge rusher because you don't need it right now unless one of these guys get hurt. You need a running back. You need a wide receiver. You don't need a outside linebacker this year. I'm going for this year.
Yeah, but it's the same thing as happening with your theory about running backs and wide receivers. You eventually will need one to replace the guy who's there right now based on those forecast. So it's going to be interesting. It's a puzzle. It always is. And there's going to be some ups and downs, things you may not expect. We're going to get into quarterbacks next because I know this is Andrew's biggest topic. We'll talk about that and whether or not the Steelers may even consider trading down if they get a good offer. But first, it's exciting when a team moves into a new building. That's certainly true with the team at number 1 Cochran Hyundai South Hills and their spacious new facility, even though they only moved less than a mile up the street. Right now, for a limited time, get special grand opening offers in both sales and service. It's the new number 1 Cochran Hyundai South Hills, now conveniently located at 3220 West Liberty Avenue. More Steeler talk, draft, coming up next. The number 1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by number 1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.